RUINER is a top-down action shooter set in a dystopian near future. It plays like a twin-stick shooter and has decent melee combat as well. It took me about 4 hours to finish the game, which was refreshing. We need more short games. There were some issues which put me off, such as missing sound effects or clarity issues, although I'm not aware if Reikon Games supported the game after its release. As I've said, RUINER plays like a twin-stick shooter. It has good variety in guns, and at least half of them has purpose. Some guns work better against some enemies, and some are unusable in some cases. You can get guns from the ground spread around the levels, or you can pick them up after you kill an enemy. There hasn't been a time when I had to use the default pistol, other than the time when it was first introduced. Constantly looking for new guns while fighting and dodging felt fun and powerful. When you clear up a level, a grinder flies down and gives you karma for each weapon on the ground, plus a better version of a random gun. My only issue with guns was the too convenient placement of flamethrowers towards the end of the game. Maybe it was too late to revise the level design to make other guns or place types viable. I don't know. Melee combat is good too, even though there isn't much variety. You essentially have two choices: one is faster and deals less damage, and one is slower but deals more damage. Their hold function is different as well. The real star in this game is range combat, and I don't mind it. It is a twin-stick shooter in the end. You can also finish off enemies to get some HP and energy back with the middle bounce button, which is helpful since the character just jumps to the closest downed enemy, and it is a nice break from the action. When you're not fighting waves of enemies, you walk through streets which screams Cyberpunk at you. And you can talk with NPCs. Sometimes the game wants you to go somewhere and there isn't a minimap, so you need to find your own way. You must explore for a few minutes between levels, at least in the first half of the game, which I found refreshing as well, since the streets weren't complicated, but there was eye candy to see. While fighting, I lost myself on the screen often. I don't know if it is me or the game lacks clarity, but I died a handful of times without seeing what hit me. And I almost dropped the game when it happened more than once in the same level. Sometimes this screen gets too crowded and there isn't enough color variety to separate you from everything else. I felt the same way while playing Hades, although I got used to it after a while. Maybe RUINER was too short to get used to the visual style. It is frustrating to not understand what is happening in a game. It is even more so when you can't even tell where you are on the screen. RUINER is the kind of game that needs some practice. You will die a few times in some levels before you understand what is expected of you, which is a lot better than games telling exactly what to do. But in other levels I started button mashing and it just worked. Now I don't know if I had formed some muscle memory or it was just pure luck, but it didn't feel good to clear those levels so mindlessly. I played the game on normal difficulty and I wasn't expecting it to be hard, but being able to button mash in some levels and dying 2 or 3 times to understand what's going on in others felt a bit weird. It can be that those levels are purposefully easy, but there's no distinction to indicate that. There's also some idle time during fights while you wait for the next wave of enemies to jump in. And it really messed up with my flow. I can see why they would time the waves the way they did to not overwhelm the player, but maybe if the next wave jumped in as soon as I cleared the previous one, it would feel better, or if there was anything else to do while waiting, I don't know. RUINER's soundtrack is so good I can't even tell you in this video. I love electronic music, and ever since I've listened to Cyberpunk 2077's soundtrack, it became one of my favorite genres. And this kind of music in a cyberpunk setting works extremely well. The soundtrack takes the atmosphere created by the visuals and gameplay and takes it to the next level. Here are some of my favorite moments from the game. The soundtrack sold on Steam and GOG doesn't have the full tracklist due to licensing issues, I guess, but you can find the playlist on Spotify, which I link below. Give it a listen. Other than the soundtrack, RUINER's sound in general is great. Every weapon, every level, and every enemy type has unique sound. Being a top-down game, graphics alone wouldn't be able to create such atmosphere, although I felt like some sound effects were missing. I'll put a clip here if I can find them. They didn't take away much from the experience, but they messed up with my immersion. I don't know whether it was a design choice or a budget issue, but there ain't much voice acting in the game, and I wish there were. But being so scarce, it works extremely well when it is present. RUINER's visuals are dominated by black, grey, red and white. It is edgy and beautiful. I think Reikon Games nailed the cyberpunk look. The streets are covered with dirt while the corporate buildings are clean and tidy. The color palette and lighting serve the atmosphere well. Everywhere you go in the game makes you feel a sense of doom. One of my issues, as I've mentioned before, is clarity. Poppy blends in too well with all the grey in the levels, and I lost myself on the screen many times during my playtime. Black and grey are the main colors. They are the base coat of paint of everything in this world. Red and white, and sometimes yellow, are used for detail and direction. Red usually means danger, and white is purely for detail and clarity. Maybe using some white and yellow for our character would be better. Lastly, about the graphics, the game is too epileptic sometimes. I expect flashing lights in a Cyberpunk game, don't get me wrong, but RUINER flashes the screen too many times in a row to remind you your objective, which I hated. At first it was cool, it even plays into the story, but why is the game flashbanging me constantly throughout the game? It was so tiring for my eyes that I had to stop playing for a few hours. Other than the clarity issues and the epileptic flash bombs, RUINER manages to be beautiful to look at while being monotone. Since it is a short game, the visuals don't get boring until you finish it. The story in RUINER isn't anything special, and I personally didn't really care for it. It starts off interesting. You are sent to kill the boss by a hacker called Wizard. This level also is the tutorial. Before you can get to the boss, another hacker known as Her overrides you and tells you that your brother is kidnapped and Wizard had something to do with it. So we go after Wizard, first of the 3 targets in the game. On the way you come across a group called the Creeps and you kill their leader and they choose you as their new one. This doesn't do much for the game other than coming across some creep buddies, I guess, around and her saying that they are trying to help us. I thought this would tie in with something bigger, but I don't think it ever did. Later we find Wizard and hack his brain, killing him in the process, and get information which leads us to Hansa compound. There we face off trafficking and his goons and track down our brother and meet Mother for the first time, who runs the place alongside trafficking. We hack trafficking's brain and learn that our brother is being taken to imagination farms, but we don't kill trafficking since he has access to everywhere we wanna go. At imagination farms we meet Geminis, a dual personality cyborg who are Mother's host. We find out that Wizard, Trafficking and Geminis were working together to overthrow the boss. After killing Geminis, we find ourselves detained by the boss, who reveals that he is our brother and was using us for our biological similarity. And we were in fact controlled by him this entire time to kill those 3. And Her was working for him. And of course there's a twist here. Her reveals that her true plan and helps us kill the boss. The ending shows us riding to an unknown destination. A sequel maybe? As you can see, it is very straightforward but has its moments, such as the ending. There is also almost no forced exposition, which is such a breath of fresh air. Unskippable cutscenes and unskippable dialogue are the 2 gravest scenes in game, which RUINER has none of. The story is short and to the point. Overall, RUINER is a great game. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel but knows very well what a wheel is. The gameplay is tight and the soundtrack is unbelievable. I hope to see more from Reikon Games, and their new project looks interesting. I'm still not sure whether to give points or marks to games I review. For now, RUINER is a you should check out. I got it on sale, and after playing the game and thinking about it, RUINER deserves the full price. To support Reikon Games' vision, if not for anything else. I have a feeling every game they make will be better.